Okay, let's talk about your lab report for the density lab. All right. We're going to start by looking at the format. Okay. So the first thing in your lab report, you should have a title. Okay. Doesn't have to be anything fancy. Just what did you talk about? All right. Density lab. Good enough title. Okay. Again, doesn't have to be anything fancy. All right. Now, in your format, you need to follow the rubric, which we'll look at here in a minute. All right. But this is pretty much your format. All right. And in this, it's going to go through kind of just step by step to show you what you need. In your introduction, all right, in your introduction, you should discuss a little bit about what the lab is, okay? What the lab is about, okay? And we need some background information. All right? So the main concept here is density and percent sugar of drinks. So you're going to look up what is density, okay? What is density? How did we come about it? How did we find it out? What is it used for? Okay. You're also going to talk about sugar in drinks. Why are we concerned with that kind of thing? And you may be thinking or maybe saying to yourself, I'm not concerned with sugar in drinks. Well, you might not be, but the lab itself is concerned with that. So you want to talk about that, okay? Then you're going to have an objective, all right? The objective is why we did it, okay? And that is in your lab write-up sheet that's given to you, okay? What is the lab supposed to do? What's it supposed to show you? Okay. So, a couple sentences about some results. What did you find? All right. All that kind of stuff needs to go in the introduction. Okay. There's no reason why this can't be at least 3/4 of a page. At least. Okay. If you do all this correctly, you double space it like you should. There's no reason why it can't be, 3/4 of a page. If you go down to methods, methods is your materials and your procedure. Okay? Materials. What did we use? All right, this is in a bulleted list. I don't want a sentence. Okay? And you don't have to put, stuff that is obvious. Okay? You don't have to put pencil and paper. Okay? We know that you have pencil and paper. You don't have to put that down. Okay? Just give the things that I provided you. Beakers, pipettes, the solutions. Okay? So you're going to have, 0% sugar solution. You have a 5% sugar solution. So on and so on. Okay? And then you're going to have the drinks. The 3 drinks. What are they? All right? You've got pipettes. Those are little plastic things, plastic droppers. You had a 10 milliliter graduated cylinder. And what else? We had a balance. Okay? So you're going to think of all the things that we used in there. You're going to put a bullet by each one or a dash or whatever you want to call it. Okay? Then you're going to have your procedure. Your procedure is going to be a numbered list. Step number 1, what did you do? Step number 2, what did you do? Okay? So you're going to come up with a procedure. Do not copy the procedure word for word. So do not copy procedure, okay, from the paperwork, word for word. You can use it as a guideline, but do not copy it. Okay? So that's in your methods section. Okay, let's scroll down here a little bit. We can. We can, but the words don't follow. That's okay. We'll change them up here in a second. So now we've got, we're moving on to our observation and data. Our observation and data, this is where your charts and graphs are going to go. Okay, so we had, in the video that I showed you earlier, we had two tables, okay, two tables, one graph, okay, two tables and one graph. First table was the percent sugar solution, densities, volume, mass, okay? And then the second table was the drinks. Density, volume, mass, and then you had your percent sugar in there, and then your percent error. Okay, all that was in that one table. Then your graph is going to be the graph that we made. Okay, it looks something like, oh, I like that. Hope it doesn't look like that. Okay, it's going to look something like that. You got your 4 lines in there. Okay, that's the graph we made. So that's the one you're going to have to put in there. Okay, and we'll talk about how we title that here in a second. Okay, now calculations. You're not going to have a calculation section in every lab, but we did some math in this one. So you're going to have a calculation section here. So what do you put in that? Okay, you're going to put, your calculation for finding density. You're going to put in your calculation for finding percent sugar, which was, the formula of this line that we had to manipulate to find X, and then, the Y was the density and the X was the percent sugar. Okay, so you're going to have to explain that. Okay, and then the percent error. Okay, so finding percent error. What's the equation for that? Now, in your calculation, you have to do each one of these one time. For each one time. Okay? So if you want to find the density, if you want to do every calculation for the Gatorade, that's fine. Okay, you're going to find the density for Gatorade. You're going to find the percent sugar for Gatorade. You're going to find your percent error for the Gatorade. All right? And then the rest of them it's just assumed that you found the rest of the densities in the same way. It's assumed that you found the rest of the percent sugars in the same way. It's assumed that you found the rest of the percent errors in the same way. Okay? All the others, a similar way. Okay, you can even say that. Okay, these are all the calculations for the Gatorade. The rest of these numbers were found using the same procedure. Okay, but you actually have to put in, must have the actual equations. Okay, and you must write out how you did it. Okay, so for density, if you're showing density, I know I'm going down into the conclusion section, but that's okay. We'll erase it here in a second. So your density, you're going to say it's mass divided by volume. Then you're going to find your density. Okay, so density equals, let's say your mass was 9.32 and your volume was 9.08. Okay, and then you're going to have your density is equal to whatever that is, grams per milliliter. Okay, and that's your density for one. Okay, that's your density for Gatorade. And then you can say the rest of the densities were found using the same formula. Then you're going to go to your percent sugar. How did you find your percent sugar? Remember, it was well, let's see. We'll erase this up here. Okay, your percent sugar. All right, this was X equals Y minus 0.984, whatever you got, divided by 0.00624. Okay, that's your equation. Okay, and then you have to say where y equals the density. Okay, so y equals the density and x equals the percent sugar. Then you're going to put your numbers in there. Okay, you're going to put this density number for Gatorade in for y right there, and you're going to go through the whole process. Okay, and then you're going to say this is the percent sugar that I found for Gatorade. Okay, all the rest of the percent sugars were found using the same calculation. Then you're going to go to your percent error. Right? You're going to do your experimental sugar minus the actual sugar I gave you, divided by the experimental sugar again. So you're going to use this x value in two places. Okay? Divide by 100, and that's your percent error. Okay? And then you can say the percent errors for Fanta and Coke were found using the same procedure. Okay, so you only have to do it one time, but because you're doing several, this calculation section should be rather lengthy. Okay, let's erase this. Let's move on to your conclusions. Okay, your conclusion section. Right? Your conclusion section should tie it all together. All right, you should talk about your results. Okay, you should discuss your graphs. Okay, and your tables. All right, you should relate back to the introduction. Okay, if in your introduction you gave the definition of density and what that means, then you should say something like as percent sugar increases, the density should increase as well, and it did or it did not. Okay? So all those things, that's relating back to your introduction. Okay, you need to talk about error. Right? And it's not enough to just say there was human error involved. Well, of course there's human error involved because you're a human. What specifically happened? Okay, were there spills? Were there malfunctioning equipment? Okay, you know, did your trend line not fit real well? What happened that would make your percent error be higher or lower? Okay, you know, future studies. Okay, what if we just took, you know, this is just an example. What if we took just Coke, and then we talked about all the different types of Coke? Okay, so same beverage, but different, I don't know, different types, I guess. So different types of Coke. So if we were just talking about Coke, you know, what about Diet Coke? What about Cherry Coke? What about, I don't know, Coke Zero? Okay, so we could do the same thing with different types. You could go to Gatorade. You could, you know, you could do different Starbucks drinks, you know, whatever you want to do, but you got to talk about something about future studies. What could we do in the same realm, you know, discussing density that is along these same lines? Okay? Works cited. Works cited page. Come on now. All right, these are all the things you looked up. So these are your references from your introduction. So when you look up the definition of density or how it was found, that's a reference. It needs to be in there. It's got to be in APA format. If you don't know what that is, look it up. Okay? Most people lose points because they don't have a works cited page. All right? So let's go to, that's the format. Okay? So let's go to the rubric. Okay? And actually, let's look at something different. Okay? A checklist. Okay, this has been shared with you. You can use this. Okay, now look at this objective. Define the purpose of the experiment. What is the problem being investigated? Stated in the form of how or why question. Okay, this one's probably going to be a how question. How does density or how does percent sugar affect density? Okay, materials. This says list the materials in 1 or 2 columns. That's fine. It doesn't make any difference to me. But you're only going to use metrics. You're not going to use pounds or anything like that. All right, hypothesis. I'm not really concerned with a hypothesis. Okay. Procedure is in listed step. You don't have to, safety precautions, you don't have to do those either. That's understood. You should always follow those. Don't put those in your lab report. Procedure is in listed steps. Steps are stated in short, clear sentences. No pronouns. That's a big one. No pronouns. Leave no steps out. Okay, this is the stuff that you need to be looking at to make sure that you did this correctly. Okay, data, observations, and calculations. Data, observations, and calculations. Show all your calculations. Include any steps done on a calculator. Okay, use all the units correctly. So follow this right here. Okay, this is all good stuff. This is all the stuff you need to follow. Okay, this is good stuff. I told you what you could scratch out. Okay, use that as a checklist. All right, let's go to the rubric. Okay, the rubric is very simple. Okay, it makes it very, very simple for me to grade. All right, so if we start at the top, you got 4 columns, 4 possible points for each one of these. You're beginning, you're developing, you're accomplished, or you're exemplary. Okay, the introduction. Okay, so let's say that your goal is to get a 3 on all these. So let's look at this one. The introduction references most of the major aspects of the experiment. Some minor details and background are missing. Okay, so if you talk all about density, but you don't mention anything about percent sugar, it's going to be difficult to get to a 3 because that's percent sugar is a major part of the experiment. Okay, so that would be under here. Major aspects of carrying out the experiment or the results are missing. Okay, hypothesis or the objective. I'm not all that concerned about a hypothesis in the sense of an if-then statement. Okay, but the question to be answered during the lab is identified. Why are we doing this? Okay, but it's maybe stated in an unclear manner. Maybe you're not 100% sure why we're doing it. Because I told you to is your reason, really. Okay, now that you don't put that in there, but if that's all you're thinking, then it's going to be hard for you to get a 3. Materials and methods. Let's move on. Important experimental details are covered, but some minor ones are missing. Okay, so you need to make sure that you're putting every single thing in there, everything we used. All right, so if you leave out pipettes, yeah, they're just the little plastic droppers, but you need to put them in there because you need those to complete the lab. Okay, move on down a little bit. Okay, observations and data. This is the big one. Okay, or this is one of the big ones. Okay, let's look at all figures and graphs right here. Let's look at the 3 because this is the goal. Okay, all figures, graphs, tables are correctly drawn, but some have minor problems or could still be improved, missing important calculations. Okay, so things you need, you know, you've got to have a title. All right, you've got to have the axis titles. All right, you've got to have a caption. Okay, and it doesn't have to be a magnificent title or a magnificent caption. Just explain what's going on. Okay, so let's draw a little example here over off to the side. If this is our graph, okay, that's the graph that we made. Okay, we've got to have a title here. That's obvious. Okay, we've got to have a title here, a title here. So here's your graph, but then you also have to title the graph. So even if your title is graph 1 or graph A, that's fine, okay? But then your caption down here needs to say graph A displays, you know, blah, 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 whatever you want to say that it displays. That's your caption right there, okay? So if you don't do all that stuff, you're down in here. Most figures and graphs are okay, but there's some are missing important parts, okay? So you need to make sure that every table, every graph that you do has that on there, okay? Table 1 shows blah, 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 you know, whatever you want it to show. Okay, let's go down here to analysis and conclusion. Okay, or sorry, analysis of data and conclusion. All right, here's your goal. Almost all of the results have been correctly interpreted. Oh, press something. Sorry. Almost all of the results have been correctly interpreted and discussed. Only minor improvements are needed. All important conclusions have been drawn. It could be, but it could be better stated. And it mentions sources of error and or references to future studies. Okay, and or. If you don't do either one of those, you're down into here where it says some mention of error or future studies. So if you only do one of those, then you're already out of 2, regardless of how well everything else is written. Okay? If you only mention one or the other as far as error or future studies, you're already down to a 2 here. Okay? You want to try to get to a 3, maybe even a 4. All right? So you need to discuss the results in a way that refers back to the introduction like we talked about. Okay? Let's move on down here. Spelling, grammar, and sentence structure. Spelling, grammar, and sentence structure. Down here towards the bottom. Again, this is our goal. Some grammar or spelling errors. Okay? You have a mature, readable style. Tense is not consistent, and you avoid pronouns. Avoid pronouns is the big one. You are not allowed to use pronouns. Okay, so let's review what pronouns are. Me, I, we, our, your, us. It is not we did this. Okay, it is not we measured the percent sugar. It is the percent sugar was measured. Okay, or the percent sugar was calculated. The volume was measured. Okay, it's not I measured the density or I calculated the density or I calculated the percent error. It's percent error was calculated. Okay, avoid pronouns. Okay, so some use of pronouns, a few, 3, 4, get you down to a 2. Some, if you include a bunch of pronouns, that's an automatic 1. Pretty simple. Okay, so let's go down here to appearance and formatting. Okay, appearance and formatting. And here's your goal. All sections in order and labeled. Formatting generally good, but could still be improved. So formatting, you want to have your headings bold. Okay, and you want to be double spaced, the whole thing. Okay, not just the introduction, not just the conclusion. All right, you want the whole thing double spaced. All right, this should be the easiest one to get a 4 on. That one right there, because all you have to do is follow the format that I just showed you and double space it. Okay, and make sure that it's readable and you put it in the right order. Okay. Last one, here's the kicker. This is where most people lose their points because they just don't feel like doing it, I guess. 3 is our goal. No in-text citations or not in APA format, okay? If you don't include a works cited, that's a 0 every single time. If all you do is list websites or inappropriate sources like Wikipedia, or if you just say Google, Google is not a resource. Google is a search engine, okay? So if all you do is that, that's a 1 right there. All right. Works cited included, but no in-text citations and not an APA format. That would get you a 2. All right. So what are in-text citations? If you define density at the top, so you say Density, wait a minute. Bulb blue, hang on. So let's say we'll do this without the screen. We'll just keep on going. There's not much left. If you say that density is the measure of mass divided by volume, or it is the measure of how much mass is in a given amount of volume. Well, if you didn't know that, then you have your definition, okay? And then you have to say what source you got that from, like in parentheses at the end of that sentence. That is an in-text citation, okay? So you need to make sure you do that and put them in APA format, all right? If you do that, you're gonna be down here, okay? Guys, it is not the content that moves people from an A to a C. The content for most of URLs is going to be very, very similar. What moves you from an A to a C, okay, what drops you down so much are the details. Did you use pronouns? Have a works cited page? Did you have all your, you're talking right here. Did you put all titles and everything on your graphs? Okay, it's the small details. You're going to spend 3 or 4 hours doing this if you do it correctly. Okay, so take another 20 minutes to do the small details. Okay, take another 20 minutes to make sure you're having all those details. Take another 20 minutes to look over this to make sure you do it well. It's 20% of your grade for the 9 weeks, so you need to probably pay attention to that. Okay, because you only get one shot at this one. Okay, so this is how you need to write a lab report specific to this